Hello, and this video is to discuss an article that appeared in the Jehovah's Witness website, jw.org, called Corrupt Politicians, What God's Kingdom Will Do. And it is a very short article, only 3 paragraphs, but it is very important because it explains an aspect of the Jehovah's Witness doctrine of political neutrality, specifically that which concerns political corruption. And as you know, Jehovah's Witnesses have a doctrine of political neutrality. Members of Jehovah's Witnesses are forbidden from participation in politics or uttering opinions about politics under pain of the excommunication, disfellowshipping. So I'm going to look first at the article, and then we're going to review the Jehovah's Witness political neutrality doctrine. And as I go along, I'm going to explain why I broke away. One of the reasons I broke with Jehovah's Witnesses was precisely this doctrine of political neutrality, which I reject totally. So as I go along, I will explain why that is. But let's first look at what the Jehovah's Witnesses have to say in their own words. So I'm just going to read the three short paragraphs. Corrupt politicians, what God's kingdom will do. Quote, people, and of course there will be links in the description to all these articles. Quote, people want government leaders they can trust. They are tired of corrupt politicians. A global survey published in 2023 ranked government leaders as the group that people trusted the least, end quote. And, I'm not surprised about that, because if you look, for example, at the U.S. Congress or the Swedish Parliament, I mean, the U.S. Congress is basically the Roman Senate. I mean, special interest groups can buy politicians, with campaign contributions, and in exchange, the congressmen and the senators do the bidding of the special interests that funded their campaigns. And in Sweden, I mean, the parliament is not a democracy. The parliament is an oligarchy. It's an encrusted oligarchy of professional politicians in the parliament who run the country and who are, in fact, the ones who hold the power. So that one reason why one reason why the trust for politicians is so low is because of the corruption. And also because politicians, for example, in Sweden, politicians are not subject to, there is no checks on their power. Once they're elected, they can do whatever they want. There is no, you cannot recall them. You cannot, there is no term limits in Sweden. In the United States, at least there is term limits. Here, there is no term limits. In Sweden, there is no term limits. So basically, the reason politicians are so corrupt and people don't trust them is because they abuse their power, and there is no check on them. So that's my perspective, not the Jehovah's Witnesses. But let's see what the article says. Quote, the Bible describes a government whose leader is completely trustworthy and honest, free from corruption. That government is God's kingdom, and its leader is Jesus Christ. And they cite Isaiah 9:7 as the scriptural basis for this statement. Let's see what Isaiah 9:7 has to say. This is the Jehovah's Witness Bible, the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. Quote, to the increase of his rulership and to peace there will be no end on the throne of David and on his kingdom, in order to establish it firmly and to sustain it through justice and righteousness from now on and forever. The zeal of Jehovah of armies will do this, end quote. So that is the Jehovah's Witness New World Translation. And yeah. So Jehovah's Witnesses, the one reason for the political neutrality is that, Jehovah's Witnesses say that the only way government free from corruption that is trustworthy and honest, that people can implicitly trust, is the government of Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ returns and establishes the kingdom. And he will do that after defeating the combined armies of the world's governments at the Battle of Armageddon. So basically, Jesus Christ will destroy the world's governments, and upon the ruins of the world's governments, he will establish the kingdom. And then that kingdom will be free from corruption. It will be trustworthy, honest, etc. Right? Now, the thing is this. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that is the only way you can have justice and freedom from corruption. Right? It can never happen. It can never come from humans. Why? Because humans are inherently sinful. So Jehovah's Witnesses assume the doctrine of original sin of Augustine of Hippo, which is actually was not present in the first century congregation, And Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to be restorationists. They're supposed to be looking at the first century congregation, but no. And again, this idea that, only Jesus Christ can save the day, the only way we can have, it's derived from the fact that they have no faith in at all. They don't deposit any faith at all in human action. So no matter how well-meaning a revolutionary could be, even if a revolution overthrows the politicians, the new government will eventually become as corrupt as the government that was overthrown. That's because all of us humans are inherently inclined towards sin and are imperfect and whatever because of original sin. Augustine of Hippo, again, that doctrine of original sin was not present in the first century congregations. There were at least two. There was the James congregation and the Peter and Paul congregation. Neither of them espoused that doctrine of original sin. That is much later, Augustine of Hippo. And let's look at the facts. So let me look at a New World Encyclopedia. Encyclopedia here, New World Encyclopedia. Let's see what they have to say. And this is one of the encyclopedias that I consult, New World Encyclopedia, because I consult several. I consult New World Encyclopedia, I consult Britannica, I consult Wikipedia, and I consult Encarta 2006, which you can get for free. And I'll put a link in the description where you can do that. Let's see, Original Sin, and I am on New World Encyclopedia here. Let's see. Original Sin. Original Sin. Original sin is a Christian doctrine describing the first human act of disobedience, as well as the ongoing fallen state of humanity, bound in enduring irremediable alienation from God. Christian tradition regards original sin as the general lack of holiness into which human beings are born, distinct from any actual sins that a person may commit later. So they're talking here, the act of first human act of disobedience, of course, is the myth of Adam and Eve, the fall of Adam and Eve. I personally, I don't believe in the existence of Adam and Eve. Okay, that was another issue I, broke with Jehovah's Witnesses with. It is impossible. Okay, that 7 billion humans today descended from two persons 6,000 years ago. Okay, it is impossible. Okay, for that, the rate of, that just goes against the science of population genetics. Okay, and etc. So once you take out Adam and Eve from the picture, once you take out the myth of Adam and Eve from the picture, the entire edifice of Christian soteriology collapses, because there is no original sin. So ergo, I am not inclined towards sin. Ergo, the ransom sacrifice of Jesus Christ was for nothing, because allegedly the ransom sacrifice of Jesus Christ happened in order to pay for the sin of Adam so that I can have a chance of salvation. All that falls apart once you realize that Adam and Eve did not exist. Okay, so once you take out that myth out, the original sin falls apart. That's one problem. Okay. In Christian tradition, the doctrine of original sin was not firmly established until the Pelagian controversy of the 5th century, right? So again, prior to the 5th century, and its Western Christian tradition concerning original sin, both Catholic and Protestant, is largely based on writings by Augustine of Hippo. And Augustine of Hippo was basing his theology on the writings of Paul, who held that Christ came as a new Adam to redeem humankind from sin. So Paul wrote that, and so Augustine of Hippo sort of extrapolated on this statement from Paul, that Jesus was the new Adam, and that's how you get all this original sin doctrine. Okay, Paul never wrote that humans are inherently inclined towards sin. Not, at least not explicitly. I would need to see that. Anyways, okay. Eastern or Orthodox tradition does not go as far as Augustine did in terms of the damage that the first sin did to human nature. Okay, so this is a Western Christian tradition, this doctrine of original sin. And again, I'm reading from New World Encyclopedia, and I'm going to put a link in the description to that. Anyways, it came out of Augustine of Hippo. Okay, so yeah, so this whole issue of inclination towards original sin, why is it that human action will not be successful against the corruption of politicians? you know um, that is premised upon a theological construct that is not original to the first century, that came from Augustine of Hippo. Hippo's interpretation of the writings of Paul. I mean, there's all sorts of problems with the doctrine of original sin. Okay, so yeah, so whether human agency can be effective against corruption or not, you know, is not inherently negated, as Jehovah's Witnesses assume. Okay, last paragraph. Quote, Jesus has a proven track record of sincere concern for people. And they cite Matthew 9:35 and 36. Let's see what it says. They cite Matthew 9:35 and 9:36 as a scriptural basis for the statement. Let's see what Matthew has to say. This is, again, I'm reading the Jehovah's Witness New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. 35. And Jesus set out on a tour of all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the good news of the kingdom and curing every sort of disease and every sort of infirmity. 36. On seeing the crowds, he felt pity for them because they were skinned and thrown about like sheep without a shepherd. Okay. Right. So Jesus cares for people. Yes. All right. I grant that. As the king of God's kingdom, he will deliver justice and peace to all those who accept his leadership. And again, according to Jehovah's Witness eschatology, Jesus, Jehovah, who in Jehovah's Witnesses parlance, Jehovah is the name of the deity. In Mormonism, Jehovah is the name of the pre-existent Jesus. Okay, so different people will use Jehovah differently, right? The word Jehovah, and the word Jehovah is an English word that appeared in the Middle Ages. It was coined by a monk. Jesus Christ never referred to his father as Jehovah. Okay, that word did not exist in Palestine in the time of Jesus, and it certainly did not exist in the Abrahamic, in the Aramaic or Hebrew language. So most of the experts, the consensus among experts is that the hypothesis of Yahweh is the most likely pronunciation for the Tetragrammaton. And I say hypothesis of Yahweh because it's just a hypothesis. There is no definite proof of how the Tetragrammaton was to be pronounced. That has been lost, and probably lost on purpose because of Judaism. In Judaism, it's prohibited to say the name of God. Anyways, only Jesus Christ will deliver a polity free of corruption and based on social justice, peace. So only the kingdom of Jesus Christ will deliver justice, peace, and an end to corruption, according to Jehovah's Witnesses. And achieving that is not possible through human agency because, again, humans are, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, inherently inclined towards sin and imperfect. Which is, that premise is debatable for the reasons I already pointed out, population genetics, etc., and also the history of the narrative of original sin. So how that narrative was constructed. So yeah, but okay, when Jehovah's Witnesses state that God, as King of God's kingdom, Jesus will deliver justice, peace, and an end to corruption, they cite Psalm 72, 12, 14 as scriptural basis for those statements. Let's see what they have to say. Again, I'm quoting from the Jehovah's Witness Bible here, the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. 12, for he will rescue the poor who cry for help, also the lowly one, and whoever has no helper. He will pity the lowly and the poor, and the lives of the poor he will save. From oppression and from violence he will rescue them, and their blood will be precious in his eyes. May he live and be given the gold of Sheba. May prayers be said for him continually, and may he be blessed all day long. I think I went over. There will be an abundance of grain on the earth. On the top of the mountains it will overflow. His fruit will flourish as in Lebanon, and in the cities people will blossom like the vegetation of the earth. May his name endure forever, and may it prosper as long as the sun. May people obtain a blessing for themselves by means of him. May all nations pronounce him happy. May Jehovah God be praised, Israel's God, who alone does wonderful things. May his glorious name be praised forever, and may his glory fill the whole earth. Amen and amen. So yeah, and again, Jehovah God, only Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, this is Jehovah's. This is a parochialism of Jehovah's Witnesses that they say that the name of God is Jehovah. Okay, there are other. Yeah, I mean, for Islam is Allah, and then there's the Yahweh hypothesis, which is probably stronger, has a stronger case than Jehovah as the name as a pronunciation for the Tetragrammaton. But yeah, put that aside. Okay, and again, in Mormonism, Jehovah is the name of the pre-existent Jesus. Okay, so different people use the word Jehovah differently, whatever. Yeah. So in the interest of fairness, so that was that article, Corrupt Politicians, what God's Kingdom Will Do. Basically, the solution to political corruption, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, is the establishment of God's kingdom on earth, which is going to be ruled by Jesus Christ. So political corruption will be stamped out when the kingdom of Christ, the kingdom of God ruled by Christ, replaces the world's governments. After the Battle of Armageddon, in which the armies of the angelic armies led by Jesus Christ will annihilate the combined armies of the world's governments. And again, I just want to say an aside here. This is very interesting because in Marxist political theory, the state is bodies of armed men. And apparently the Bible supports that, because Jesus is coming back leading an army of armed angels to destroy the world's government's armies. So the Bible corroborates Karl Marx that the state is bodies of armed men. As an aside. That's a political departure, excuse me. I am a Marxist. I am a primitive Marxist. So I have to throw that in. But anyways, let's back to theology. This is about theology, not politics. Let's see. Let's review the 4 reasons for Jehovah's Witness Political Neutrality. And this is an article that says, it's in the Jehovah's Witnesses FAQ, again in jw.org, the Jehovah's Witness website. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses maintain political neutrality? And I'm going to put a link in the description to the article. You can read it for yourself. But I just want to review the 4 reasons why Jehovah's Witnesses maintain political neutrality. Number 1, quote, we follow the example of Jesus, who refused to accept political office. And they cite John 6:15 as the scriptural basis for that statement. He taught his disciples to be, quote, no part of the world, end quote, and made it clear that they would not take sides in political issues. And they cite John 17:14, 16, 18, 36, and Mark 12, 13, 17 as scriptural basis for these statements. You can look them up yourself. In the article, I will link in the description to the article, and in there you can find these links to the Jehovah's Witness Bible. Again, all these links will lead you to the Jehovah's Witness Bible, which is New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. You may want to go to Bible Hub or Bible Gateway, and there you can get in another version of the Bible, like NIV or whatever, King James or what have you. Yeah, let's see. Reason number 2. Quote, we are loyal to God's kingdom, which Jesus spoke of when he said, quote, this good news of the kingdom will be preached in all inhabited earth, end quote. And they cite Matthew 24:14 as scriptural basis for that statement. As representatives of God's kingdom commissioned to proclaim its coming, we remain neutral in the political affairs of all countries, including the one where we live. And they cite 2 Corinthians 5:20 and Ephesians 6:20 as scriptural basis for the statement. 3. Quote, by remaining neutral, we are able to speak freely to people of all political persuasions about the good news of God's kingdom. We try to show by our words and practices that we rely on God's kingdom to solve world's problems. And they, end quote, and they cite Psalm 56:11 as scriptural basis for the statement. And finally, 4th, quote, since we avoid, this is Jehovah's Witnesses speaking, since we avoid political divisions, we are united as an international brotherhood. And they cite Colossians 3:14 and 1 Peter 2:17 as scriptural basis for the statement. In contrast, religions that meddle in politics divide their members. And they cite 1 Corinthians 1:10 as scriptural basis for the statement. So let's unpack this. Number 1, okay, I want to say something really quick before I unpack this. Number 1, the reason I am against political neutrality is because political neutrality excuses tyranny and oppression, okay? Political neutrality is a political position, okay? Because to maintain a politically neutral perspective has political consequences, okay? In the form of demobilization. So if you tell a person, all Jehovah's Witness members are essentially politically neutered. That means that they are supposed to just stand passively by while tyranny and oppression just, do what they want. And I mean, tyranny and oppression has a deleterious impact on human happiness. So, I mean, tyranny and oppression destroy people's lives, cause massive amounts of suffering worldwide. And Jehovah's Witnesses seem to just simply stand by and let this happen and do nothing about it. So the political neutrality position of Jehovah's Witnesses excuses tyranny, excuses oppression, and makes people passive before tyranny and oppression, when in fact they should be trying to organize to end the tyranny and the oppression. So that is the reason why I don't agree with Jehovah's Witness, but Jehovah's Witness political neutrality doctrine, because it is basically it ends up working in favor of tyranny and oppression. So by demobilizing people who are affected by the tyranny and the oppression. And it sort of grants impunity to tyranny and oppression in practice. So that is why I don't agree with the Jehovah's Witness political neutrality doctrine, and I broke away with it. And that was one of the reasons I broke away with Jehovah's Witnesses, was precisely that they have this political neutrality doctrine. I don't accept it. Yeah, okay. First of all, they claim that Jesus was not political, and he taught his disciples to be no part of the world. So yeah, because in Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe that politics is a subset of Satan's system. So because Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the world is controlled by Satan. So the world is, the political and economic aspects of the world are controlled by Satan. So the political system, or in political activity, is a subset of Satan's system, because Satan controls the political system. So, and that situation will end. I mean, obviously, Satan controls the world's governments are a front for Satan. That's how they see it. Okay? So all the governments of the world, all states are satanic, ultimately. They're controlled by Satan. Because all the states are administrators of the political subset of Satan's system. And then the economic subset, which is capitalism, but the Jehovah's Witnesses called the commercial system, that is also controlled by Satan. And that is the reason you have injustice and corruption in the economic system, is because Satan controls it. So yeah. So I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses don't call it capitalism; they call it the commercial system. But we know what they're talking about. And on that one, I like Jehovah's Witnesses. They are objectively anti-capitalist, even though they don't do anything about it. They are anti-capitalist in the sense that they're very clear that you have to put your God before mammon. So God comes before money or profits. You cannot serve both, money and God. You have to choose one or the other. So Jehovah's Witnesses take it very seriously, that when Jesus threw out the money changers from the temple. So that part of Jehovah's Witnesses is okay. I like it as a Marxist. I sympathize with that, but I don't agree with their position of political neutrality. And let's see, yeah, they claim here, right, we remain neutral in the political affairs of all countries. So because, right, they say that in order to appropriately preach the good news in all countries, they need to stay out of political affairs and concentrate in religious proselytization. Okay, that's okay. Jehovah's Witnesses are a religious organization, not a political organization. So it's okay. I mean, obviously, they want to focus on theology and religion, not politics. That's fine. That's understandable. Let's see. They claim this: by remaining neutral, we are able to speak freely to people of all political persuasions about the good news of God's kingdom. Yeah. Maybe so. The problem is, though, a lot of those political persuasions are persuasions that defend tyranny, exploitation, and oppression. So you try to talk to those people about God's kingdom, they're going to laugh you off because they're not interested. Yeah. We try to show by words and practices that we rely on God's kingdom to solve world's problems. Yeah. And that's the problem. See, that you're waiting for God's kingdom to solve the world's problems, and meanwhile the problems fester and destroy people's lives, and you do nothing about it in the here and now. So we're sitting around waiting for the God's kingdom Jehovah's Witnesses claimed that it would happen within a generation of the generation of 1914. That didn't come out to be true. This is already 2024. So it is about 110 years after, to 1914, and nothing has happened. So I don't know. Since we avoid political divisions, we are in an international brotherhood. In other words, there are no political divisions inside the congregation. And on this one, I kind of agree with Jehovah's Witnesses, because I am a person, I believe in keeping politics and theology separate. So even though I am organized with a political organization, I am also, I am organized. I am part of a congregation, but I am also organized politically with a political organization, right? And I keep those two worlds separate. What I do politically and what I do ecclesiologically are separate. So you will never hear me bring politics into the congregation, and you will never hear me talk about theology in a political context, okay? In the context of the political organization that I'm organized with. So I keep the politics and the political and the theological separate. But now Jehovah's Witnesses say, though, that you can only focus on the theological and ignore the political, and that's where I don't agree. You can do both as long as you keep them separate. So, and yeah, I mean, you can be united in the congregation in terms of the goals of the congregation, but you can have political differences among the different members as long as you keep them to yourself and you don't discuss it in the congregation, and you don't let your political differences affect the work of the congregation, So, yeah. And it says here, religions that meddle in politics divide their members. I can say that, yeah, I can say that, like the Catholic Church, for example. During World War II, the Catholic Church, had chaplains on both sides. There were Catholic chaplains in the Allied armies, and there were Catholic chaplains in the Axis armies, and yeah, that created a problem here because, yeah. So, they ended up supporting both sides. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, the chaplains in one side would bless one side, while the chaplains in the other side would bless the other side, and the result was that Catholics, German Catholics and American Catholics, were killing each other. Okay, and that was the Catholic Church. Bless that. So I can see how the Jehovah's Witnesses mean by religions that meddle in politics divide their members. So you will never see a Jehovah's Witness chaplain in the army, because members of Jehovah's Witnesses are not allowed to serve in the military or the police. Yeah. So anyways, I'll leave it like that. Yeah, so yeah. Anyways, they say something else here, that respect for governments. Quote, although we do not take part in politics, we respect the authority of the governments under which we live. This is in harmony with the Bible's command, let every person be subject to the superior authorities, Romans 13 and 1. And this is one problem I have also with the Mormons. In the Articles of Faith, Joseph Smith writes something different. It's something similar to this. This blind subjection to the authority of governments works to, empower tyranny and oppression. What happens if the government you live under is a dictatorship, a fascist dictatorship, or some sort of autocratic regime that destroys people's lives? What if it's a government where the laws that are enforced by the police are unjust? I mean, this perspective of blind respect for authority of the governments, allows for tyranny and oppression, which is again the problem with Jehovah's Witnesses. And the LDS Mormons have the same problem, this blind respect for the authority of governments. I mean, no, you don't grant blind respect to the authority of governments. You only respect the authority if the authority conforms to human rights. If a government engages in tyranny, or if a government condones oppression, or if a government condones exploitation and social injustice and violations of human and civil rights, then that government loses the right to be respected. Okay? And it is then appropriate to engage in civil disobedience and non-compliance, and ultimately organize to overthrow that government. Okay? So yeah, I mean, tyranny and oppression is not something that humans need to suffer. Not really. So yeah, anyways, that's it. The commentary on Jehovah's Witnesses on corruption of politicians and political neutrality. Thank you. Bye.